What is the environmental cost of our digital lives? From the data we store to the AI we trust. What happens behind the screens we use every day? Hey, I'm Curly Steve, and I'm searching for a greener room. Today we're here with Nigel Gooding. Nigel, welcome to the show. Hi Nigel, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Steve, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's nice to have you here.
Yeah, it's very, very, very lovely to be here.
Well, let's rewind. You're a West Country boy.
Yes, I am.
Tell me a little bit about it.
Yes, I am. I was brought up in Exeter, and I spent mainly my childhood up until 18, 19 in Exeter, and my parents were my father was a railwayman, my mother worked in a baker. She was also a cleaner at the university, at Exeter University, and quite a gentle upbringing in an environment of which was close to the sea, close to the moors, close to the open spaces. We lived in a council estate on the edge of Exeter, and all our summers would be spent rambling through the woods and the fields and the bogs and the rivers and the streams, catching tadpoles and doing things most probably that I wouldn't dream of doing now. But in terms of my environmental credentials, climbing trees and just having fun, really. So yeah, I was very lucky. Although employment-wise made me move away for about 20 years, I came back in 2011. So I've been back in the West Country since 2011. So.
And what happened in 2011? What brought you back?
Oh, well, quite simply, I got divorced. So
okay, there we go.
And my children were growing up, and they live in Exeter. So I decided to move back full time, and I realised that I could actually do most of my my business then, because 2011 I had connectivity, and we were doing stuff that I could actually live in Devon and actually commute to the work that I was doing at the time. So 2011 really was the catalyst for coming back, and I'm unlikely to move now again, I don't think, from the West Country.
Fair play. So tell me a little bit about your business. What is it you actually do?
So the Data Privacy Advisory Service I set up in 2017 really to capture a bit of the market when the data protection and information governance laws were changing. GDPR was changing, and there was greater emphasis on that. And I set it up, and we provide data protection and consultancy services, something called data protection officer services, and training, information security training, information governance training, and cybersecurity training, and AI. And so we offer consultancy and also training as well. So it's a multifaceted business in data protection, data privacy, information governance, cybersecurity, and AI. We're based in Exeter, just outside in the Holden Hills, a very lovely area, and we have about 15, 16 staff now from a zero start. So
that's fantastic.
That's what we do. Yeah.
And tell me about sustainability, because you're also doing doctoral studies as well, aren't you? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I've always been quite entrepreneurial. I spent the first 13 years of my working life working in the railway industry. I was a graduate management trainee to the British Rail Management Training Scheme and did various management positions. And when privatisation appeared in 1995, 96, I took redundancy and then decided to go and work for myself. So I've always worked for myself. So I've always been quite entrepreneurial, but I've always been interested in the challenge that we have, certainly in the Southwest, of building sustainable business in outstanding areas of outstanding natural beauty. And so it was always a challenge to me about how we could sustain long-term employment growth and also long-term sustainable business in terms of an environmental perspective, but also at the same time respect the nature and the environment and the wonderful landscape that we actually live in. So my doctorate research is based upon Cornwall natural landscapes, which is in Cornwall. Cornwall is quite unique because it has 12 sections rather than one. Cornwall as a whole per se is not part of the natural landscape. So it's looking at how Cornwall natural landscape is able to develop within their business plans sustainable business in those 12 environmental protected areas in Cornwall.
Fantastic. And so that keeps you on your toes, all of that. That keeps you quite busy.
It's a bit of a challenge, really, because clearly they're not 12 contiguous areas, they're all 12 disparate areas, and all of which has different stakeholders, have different objectives, are different landscapes. If you take, for example, the area south of St Ives in the old Penwith district, is different than the Heartland district, which is up in the north, north of Morinstow and towards between Bideford and Bude, for an example. If you take the Roseland Peninsula, that's different, for an example, than the Tamar Valley. So it is very, very interesting, because you have that different landscapes, different environmental challenges, different challenges in terms of stakeholder management and those people who are involved in that. So it is actually quite an interesting challenge, because what's not known about Cornwall's outstanding area of natural beauty is really that in 1948 the proposal was that Cornwall national landscapes, the outstanding area of natural beauty, should be a national park, such as Exmoor or Dartmoor or the New Forest or the Lakes or the North Yorkshire National Park. And because it wasn't a contiguous area, and because the local government setup was quite different then, it was deemed that it didn't quite meet the challenges that the other parks did, and it never became a national park. So the history behind it is actually quite interesting, and certainly you only have to go south of St Ives to see the mining heritage that exists, for example. And certainly the mining heritage didn't necessarily support areas of outstanding natural beauty, and clearly outstanding of natural beauty. But in itself, that heritage has become outstanding area of natural beauty, and has become the draw that Cornwall has for people. The steam houses and the arsenic works and the mines and the evidence of industrial heritage is really important to providing part of that. So yeah, it is a great topic. Hopefully I shall finish in the next 3 or 4 years. But
that's the plan.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah.
Excellent. So tell me, why Cornwall?
Why Cornwall? Well, I always believe in life that things happen for a reason. There are always actions and consequences, and I was very lucky that 2 years ago I did a postgraduate certificate in higher education at Falmouth University, and was able to, which is a university lecturer's qualification, the same as a teacher's qualification. And I really enjoyed Falmouth University. I really enjoyed the smallness of it, the richness of it, the people of it, the learning style of it. And then it was clear that I had a heritage link in my own family with Cornwall. My grandmother was born in St Austell Workhouse in 1898, the 4th of April, 1898, and to an 18-year-old mother who was sent away to have the baby. And I've always been attracted, I think, to having a heritage of either being Welsh, Irish, or Celtic heritage, or Cornish. And that was a unique fact that I thought, that's quite interesting. But of course, I'm like most people who were first attracted to Cornwall. You came here with a bucket and spade when you were 5 or 6 and never wanted to leave. And I always remember seeing the sunset over Godrevy Lighthouse when I was a child, when we were staying in a very small chalet, which we most probably couldn't afford now in the 70s at Gwithian, but to stay there. But and I always remember that it was a magical place to me. And Gwithian and Godrevy is my magical place in terms of where I always go back to. So I was very lucky that at the time the leadership team in Cornwall Business School I knew. I'd worked with them at Plymouth Marjon University, and all of a sudden I saw an opportunity for a PhD, particularly around outstanding area of natural beauties. It hadn't been done before, new research, and that dilemma about how can we develop sustainable business in outstanding area of natural beauty, because by definition both are two diametrically opposite each other, and so I liked the supervisor. I'd worked with him before, and so everything fell into place really. So I had just this holistic view, Steve, that I could spend my mid-60s just sitting on cliff tops and watching sunsets. So there was a bit of romanticism behind it, but now I'm actually doing the work. Then perhaps I should give myself a swift kick at the backside and think, come on, mate, it's not always about romanticism. You've got to do some work here, and at some point you've got to write 80,000 words about this. That is new research. So that's why Cornwall. Yeah.
So I've got hundreds of questions for you. We might have to have more than one show. But first, I'm going to go in with. We spoke before about. You said to me earlier about keep attacking. Can you explain that to me? Why that's your motto?
Yeah, I think that so 20 years ago this year I discovered I had head and neck cancer, and I had quite a brutal sort of 6-7 months of treatment, had radiotherapy to your head, unable to eat properly, fed by nasal tube and those sort of things. And I always felt that I'm never one to dramatise when people have a fight against cancer and that sort of thing, because I don't think it is a fight. I think that, but I always think that you should look forward in your life rather than backwards in your life, because I saw some things, when I was working in that environment, that was staying in that environment and being hospitalised and that sort of thing, that really made me think about life is very short, and there are very few opportunities we get. So when you see it, just keep attacking and just move forward, really. And one of my famous sayings is really that if you face the sun, the shadows will be behind you rather than in front of you. And
Perfect.
So I'm always and particularly if you face the sun at Gwithian Towers whilst the sun's setting, it's always behind you, so that's sort of good.
That's a beautiful place to be when the sun's setting, isn't it?
I might mention it more than once, Steve.
So tell me, let's just rewind to the sustainability and areas of outstanding natural beauty. What are we doing about that, and how are we improving? How are we making sure that they're being looked after?
So that's a really good point. Now, sustainable, it to me has two folds. One, the environmental sustainability, so making sure that businesses within that environment, either present or new, are able to operate in a sustainable, environmentally sustainable way. And then secondly, sustainable, are able to sustain themselves more than 4 months a year. Because I think that's absolutely vital. Because otherwise, if they don't, you're going to have a landscape which is barren, with no people, with no support. And 75% of the outstanding area of natural beauty, the Cornwall natural landscape, as it's now called, is agricultural land. So,
Right.
so clearly, 75% of that is agricultural. So it's really important that we look at both factors. The research looks at both factors. And when we're looking at sustainable business, we're looking at sustainable farming and agriculture and what that looks like. We're looking at sustainable tourism and what that looks like. And when we're looking at sustainable businesses, i.e. what lasts more than 4 months, is that what good looks like. So the whole idea of the research would be to do the research and look at not only Cornwall but other areas of the UK, but also around the world, of national parks, for example, who have been able to facilitate sustainable businesses and business growth within areas of outstanding natural beauty and protected landscapes, and put a framework to say this is what good looks like. So if you're looking for what good looks like in terms of sustainable business, a framework, these are the key things that you need in that environment to do so. So therefore, you most probably need access to funding, you'd need access to housing, you'd need access to a workforce, you'd need access to transport and communications, whether it be technology communications or whether it be road, rail or bus infrastructure, and with everything that actually comes with it. So it's an overarching piece that I think that at the end of the 4 years, I will be able to say, if you want to develop sustainable businesses in outstanding areas of outstanding natural beauty, these are the criteria that you need in place as building blocks, really, to be able to facilitate that. And in Cornwall, one of the ways that that happens is that the Cornwall Natural Landscape, which is an organisation part of English Natural Landscape, used to be, so Cornwall Natural Landscape renamed from Cornwall Outstanding Area of Natural Beauty last year. The previous government affected that change, and as a result of that, they have to put together a 5-year business plan, of which they have to show how they manage sustainable businesses within their area. And so that will become the core text as such. So that if you said to me, what's your core text that you would default to? Well, it would be the Cornish National Landscapes Business Plan, because that's the key driver for them to be able to deliver sustainable business. So I'm assessing, not in a audit way, but I'm assessing whether that business plan is robust enough to enable sustainable businesses to thrive in areas of outstanding natural beauty. So it's the starting point. So.
And you say farming and tourism. Are there any other smaller businesses that are being looked at?
So at the moment, no. At the moment, but no. But when I said about tourism, I will bring in the hospitality, but also the ancillary businesses that sit alongside tourism. So not
Right,
only
yeah.
hospitality,
Yeah.
not only your pubs and your cafes, but also what's good, near to you and dear to you, your surf schools and your pony trekking and all those ancillary businesses that are
And
supported.
presumably businesses that support tourism as well. So
Correct.
your building businesses and
Building, your plumbers, your electricians,
yeah,
your
okay.
doctors' surgeries,
Yeah.
your all those ancillary exercises or people that actually support those businesses in those protected landscapes. Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And how is farming in Cornwall?
I think farming is tough anywhere in the
Yeah.
UK at the moment.
Yeah.
I think that the challenge is that clearly they've had a couple of shocks. The first shock was really about withdrawing from the European Union. I think it's fair to say that the safety net that they were provided disappeared, and that safety net was backfilled or attempted to be backfilled by government, but that hasn't happened, and as a result of that, then that becomes a challenge. And if you say to farmers, for example, that we want to act in a sustainable, environmentally friendly way, then farmers are in favour of that. Most farmers,
Yeah, for sure.
They're bad eggs and everything, but most, the vast majority of farmers are in farming because they want to have a sustainable way of living and landscape that they operate under, because better landscape, better outputs, better profits for their business, because ultimately they are running it for business. There aren't many farmers who do it for philanthropy reasons. It's a tough environment, and clearly governmental support and support from schemes need to be maintained and put in place from that. And clearly then as well that farming has a current challenge in terms of employment. So we have an ageing population in Cornwall and also the southwest. We don't necessarily have the migration that we had 5-6 years ago in terms of it. So people to be able to work.
Well, we don't have people coming from abroad.
No, we
so
don't.
much,
No,
do
we don't. We don't have that migration in place, and no disrespect to local people, but we just haven't got the younger workforce who A, can work, or B, want to work on.
And is it fair to say that part of that problem is second homes and not enough accommodation and not enough spaces for people to stay?
So one of the things that my research wants to look at is the social economic points about if we look at farming, for example, agriculture, or even hospitality, for example, we look at tourism, some of the challenges that these areas might have. And clearly, from our perspective, in outstanding areas of natural beauty, whether it be East Devon, which is another outstanding area of natural beauty, the Tamar Valley, or Cornwall natural landscape, or Cornwall outstanding area of natural beauty, Cornwall natural landscapes, we have an ageing population because it's a nice place to live.
Yeah, for sure.
And by definition, ageing populations are cash rich, tend to be more well off, tend not to have to work in Plymouth, Exeter, Truro, Redruth, Camborne or Newquay, that tend not to have to work in those environments, and therefore can afford to live in those environments. And as a result, you have an issue on supply and demand. And of course, in those outstanding areas of natural beauty, then people want to go and stay on holiday in those outstanding areas of natural beauty. We're very lucky. We're sitting here today on a beautiful sunny day. I was driving down over Bobbin Moor and thinking, isn't the world great? But I have driven over, in the winter over Bobbin Moor and think, isn't the word Bobbin Moor is the most inhospitable place I've ever been to. So it's not only ageing population. Second homes is a challenge, but I think more of a challenge is clearly those which are used for holiday purposes and those sort of things. But of course, if you've got a lack of supply, then but demand is high, then therefore costs will go up. It's just a natural economic curve. Yeah. So that will be a challenge. The social economic challenges of outstanding areas of natural beauty about good, sustainable jobs which will last more than 12 months. Jobs which also are close to employment, because no one really, for example, lives close to their employment as we used to. Pendine, for example, I was in Pendine in the first week in January, and and I stayed in a miner's cottage, and that miner would have, with their family, would have spent their whole life around the mines at Levant, and would have walked the half a mile to the environment. But these things don't happen anymore, and so there are a number of challenges that outstanding areas of natural beauty have from a social economic point of view, and yes, second homes, affordable housing, by definition. The term affordable means it's unaffordable for local people, and of course the other thing is net migration. You know, when you think about net migration, young people now have lived through COVID, and you know, does Cornwall have the challenges they had when they were 16, 17 now they're 25? Answer, most probably no. You know, and then there are other places. And my own children are a good example. My daughter is a mental health nurse in Cardiff. She stayed when she went to university, and my son works in Bristol and lives in Bristol. So another good example of how children are likely to migrate away from the southwest. And only be able to come back at some point when they can afford it when they're older. So it's that sort of vicious spiral. There was Andrew George, the MP for St Ives. I was watching him in the week. Is leading a campaign around a tax loophole that exists with second homes, for example. And that's a very interesting point because by defining them as holiday cottages, therefore they can define them as businesses. So therefore, but because they're so small, they can claim small business rates relief, so therefore they pay no council tax and they pay no rates relief, for example. So, and Andrew George has said it's up to £500 million tax loophole that exists, you know, for the environment. So you know that's a simple thing. It's crazy. If you're a young couple, for example, wanting to stay in Pendine or wanting to stay in Zeno or wanting to stay, you know, in St Just, for example, in the far west outstanding area of natural beauty, you have a challenge. You're competing against people who are richer than you, most probably older than you, and most probably have a better credit rating than you. So.
Well, it does seem that loopholes seem to favour the rich, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, they have good lawyers to find them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I say, I could chat to you about all this all day long, but I'd really like to touch on the screen time and what that means to you. Screen time, AI. What's going on in that space for you at the moment?
You know, AI is, we're in a hype cycle at the moment. So any technology, you and I are old enough to remember the last, dot-com boom and bust cycle. And AI is in a hype cycle at the moment, mainly driven by generative AI, which you would define as ChatGPT and those other things that we can do at the moment. You know, I was looking at someone this morning, my dog Bo, who's sitting at my feet at the moment, she came from the Royal Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, Little Valley Shelter, and she was a rescue dog, and they've mocked up a member of their staff, and AI can produce an action man or action woman kit.
I've seen these popping up all over LinkedIn,
and so generative AI has really focused our minds about AI, but we've been opening our phones. We've been opening our phones with our faces and our fingers and our thumbprints for years. We've been using Alexa. We've been using Siri.
Well, AI's first purported to have started in 1954, isn't it?
Yeah, 1956 at the Dartmouth conference. It was framed artificial intelligence, but Alan Turing did the Turing test in 1950, so that was the start of it. So we're in this big hype cycle at the moment, predominantly because we've got access to great AI and we can do great things with it, and it's open and it's accessible. Like any new technology, it starts off expensive but then gets cheaper, and like any new technology, it gets stolen by someone. If we think about fire, at some point there was one group of people who lit the first fire, but within rapid amount of time, people were warming themselves up or cooking food using fire because they didn't have the monopoly on the. So AI is driving change. People can see the benefits of AI. They can see the resource benefits of it. They can see the ability to work across unstructured data. So unstructured data is data which is not necessarily in a database, but it's across a range of activities such as PDFs or emails, laptops, social media responses. So AI is booming at the moment. The big players in AI are the technology companies. the Amazons of the world, the Googles, the Metas, the Microsofts of the world, and certainly there is a drive to be the race to be the AI leader in terms of countries in the world, and so Keir Starmer has said that the UK wants to be one of the world leaders. Trump has said that he is keen, and they're an investment of 500 billion US dollars. That's a huge amount of money. In terms of AI.
And China's keen. And
Absolutely,
India's
because
keen.
the benefits are quite clear. But like anything, with any new technology, there are always risks. For example, when the Wright brothers got inside their airplane and flew for 12 seconds, they never knew that there would be, at some point in the future, a bomber which could carry a nuclear missile, like the British Vulcan bomber, for example. But the unintended consequences of new technology were never known.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of people say, I'm really scared of AI. It could do bad. Yeah, well, a car in the wrong hands is a dangerous weapon. So AI is growing. The fear of AI is really data, an algorithm, and an output. But it's what happens within the initial data that you have got, and ironing out the biases that exist within that data set, the algorithm and the weightings that you attach to certain outcomes you want to achieve, and then the outcomes and how we do that.
So let me just pause you there. The way I understand AI is it looks at a question, and it gives you the most probable answer to that question based on the pattern of what the question looks like. Is that correct? To really break it down?
Yes, it's one of the ways it can do. So AI is an overarching name. It has three elements to it. It has machine learning. It has something called deep learning, which is using big computers, using lots of data, and using lots of algorithms to be able to come out with the output. And then generative AI, which is, as I've just said about ChatGPT, and generative something new. And in essence, AI is telling us something new about the data that we've actually put into the system. So, for example, when you look at your facial recognition on your camera, it's taking a picture of when you first start, it takes a picture of your face several times, and it's identifying in mathematical, so exactly that, mathematical format, a grid, and it's giving features on your face a point and a number, using a binary number. When you go back at some point in the future and point your face to it, it's trying to match it up to the picture it had using mathematics. It's not using pixels on your and when it opens it, Steve, it's saying this is probably you, because it's a probability model. Correct?
Right.
Yes.
So it's more probable to be you than it is a million other people. Correct. Or something like that.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
But also then it learns for itself.
Yeah.
So if you're down at the beach and surfing, and you've just got out in your van, and you've got your sunnies on, for example. And you open your phone, it necessarily first time won't open your phone, and you have to put your code in. Yeah. But after about 10 times of putting your code in, it identifies it, saying, hang on, every time he's shown it that picture with his sunnies on, then actually so it starts to learn. A very good example, I was in Thailand last year and on holiday, and I had a drink in a bar. I paid by my card, I think it was a tap card, and about a minute later, I then booked a flight on my phone. The two were most probably connected because I most probably had too much to drink, but I spent £1,000 on a flight. I think I was going somewhere on the way back to London, and so I thought I'd redirect my flight. Within seconds, my bank had rang up and said, "Excuse me, sir, is this you?" Because it had identified a pattern of behaviour which is unusual, because they know what my normal spending pattern is, because they have that in an algorithm. They know it. When something's out with so when you think about mathematics, when it's outside the normal natural curve, it then says, oh, okay, there's an anomaly here, perhaps we should ring him and just check this one out. So fraud detection is another good example.
That's massive, isn't it? And again, that's when they see something that's not quite
pattern,
right.
Correct, a pattern which is a trend which is not in your normal. Your bank, for example, will know your spending. They'll know what you normally spend.
They'll know that on a Wednesday I go shopping, on this day I do that, and occasionally I do that, and maybe go home.
But why would Nigel be buying £1,000 flight? It may not be £1,000, but it was a significant number after a very small transaction.
Yeah, okay. And now, a word from our sponsor. Solve is an SEO and web design agency that builds high quality, sustainable websites and strategies to help businesses grow online. They're also B Corp, meaning they're a business for good, making a positive impact while driving real results. As a special offer for our listeners, Solve is offering a free website audit and consultation. Just mention Searching for a Greener Room to claim yours. So, talking about fraud protection, tell me about how that works.
Yeah, fraud protection is one of the interesting areas. So most banks or financial services, credit card companies that we deal with know our spending habits using AI and great big algorithms to work out how we spend and when we spend. So, for an example, let's take your normal bank card, your normal current account card. They would normally know that you might go on a Friday to Tesco's or Sainsbury's or Aldi or Lidl or Waitrose or one of the supermarkets, and you would buy a big shop, and then you would incidentally during the week you would use and you would sometimes during the week you might do some internet shopping. But so a good example of my example was in Thailand that banks know the pattern of behaviour now online which identifies fraudulent behaviour. And normally, for an example, if you look at it, it's normally a small transaction followed by a big transaction. But of course, when you consider the amount of data that banks have, it's really impossible for humans to keep track of us. So my trip to Thailand last year was a classic example why I went to, I had a dinner, I went to a bar afterwards, I tapped my card on a small transaction, a relatively small transaction for a drink. And then whilst I was sitting for a drink, I decided to book my flight home, and it was something like £1,000 rather than £5 or whatever the Thai equivalent was. And within seconds, I had a text message from the bank and a phone call from the bank saying, "Mr. Gooding, we've noticed there's a small transaction and then a very big one made on a different format." So they'd noted my tap was carded, but I booked the flight on my phone. And we noticed that the IP address, i.e. the internet address, was actually not in the UK, so not the one that we're normally seeing. So when you consider a bank trying to put all that information together in using human beings, it would be impossible because you'd need a number of different systems.
Well, they'd need to be looking at your account all the time.
So what AI has done is that the bank knows what fraud looks like. And so what they've done is that in the AI systems, they said, if any of the patterns of these patterns are picked up across any of our networks, then therefore it needs to be flagged up. And as a result, it was flagged up. Now, there is a good mathematical way of doing that because our spending patterns are clustered, and anything that sits outside the normal pattern of our behavior can then be graphically formatted, and of which then an action can take place, i.e. we need to talk to Mr. Gooding, which they did. So that's a good example. That's a good example of how fraud
just out of interest, if I'm I've been surfing for many years, and if that expense was suddenly a surfboard, would that be recognised as a usual behaviour for me because they've seen that?
Might be, yeah. I think that when you consider that airlines and those sort of areas are quite frequent fraud areas of people stealing people's credentials and then going booking a flight sort of thing. I remember, and in 2005 I went to speak at a conference in Johannesburg, and I went shopping next to the conference centre, and of course it was the day when they would give you a receipt, credit card receipt, but on the credit card receipt it would have all the information you needed, including your expiry date. There was no such thing as the security numbers down in the back. And within two weeks of me getting back to the UK, people had booked flights using the credit card details because I had left the receipt in the hotel, or I'd left the receipt with the person behind the counter or such. And so evidently I'd booked 10 flights from Johannesburg to London.
Which obviously now AI would have picked that up and said he doesn't need 10 flights.
And it would have stopped. It would have stopped, yeah. It would have stopped that, yeah. It's a bit like you trying to open your phone, with the wrong PIN number 5 times and it'll close it down. Fraud systems within banks are designed to set up. So a real positive of AI.
How about the amount of data and information that each individual has online? You work with security and all of that sort of stuff. What can we do to sort that, because I've had a computer since I had a tiny computer, I don't know, 19 whenever, and I must have put my details into computers
Well,
hundreds of
I think
times.
when you and I had a Sinclair Spectrum, which is one of my first, one of my first computers, and it had a tape recorder and made funny noises. But it was never connected to anyone. It was never connected.
No.
It was always it was always devoid of any connection. It wasn't until the late 90s that we started connecting it to people. And then that's when the risk came. And look, we all leak like sieves data. We all try not to leak like sieves. And one of the reasons that when you consider the reason why we have data protection law in this country, which were predominantly driven by the events of Europe in the 1930s and 40s, where organizations wanted to collect data and wanted to segregate people and wanted to put them in silos and wanted to. So one of the key things about GDPR is that it guarantees our rights to have our information private within certain functions, and particularly when we think about the special characteristics, our faiths, our race, religion, trade union membership, sexuality, sexual orientation, health. But we leak like sieves, we access. And of course, the challenge we have is, and one of the things that you said earlier about, one of the books that you might want to read is about The Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleyman. Mr. Suleyman was is currently the head of AI at Microsoft and wrote the book about the coming wave. It is about that we are marketers' dream. Organizations are in business because they need to increase shareholder value, if you're talking about a commercial organization. And the data they have on us means that they can cross and upsell other products to us. You'll hear all your stories about the fact is, oh, that was really weird. I was online looking for garden products. And the next thing you know, someone said, would you like to buy a gazebo? Presented to me. And that's because the profiling that is taking place. So we're leaking data.
And data. Am I right in saying that data is the gold dust of commodities nowadays?
Well, yeah, some people call it the new oil, but like oil, if you mistreat it, it can have serious consequences.
Yeah, for sure.
And certainly we all leak like sieves in terms of our data and all we can do. I put in, for example, I use an app to get here today, for example, and in the car, and the location tracking service was already there. Yeah. So yes, but we must remember where data protection legislation came from, and it came from the Nazi regime and certainly the Eastern European regimes after the Second World War. And the reason why they wanted to collect data is so that they could persecute certain sections of the community.
Right.
Now,
so
of course,
nothing to do with marketing?
Not yet.
Not yet. That's
no.
interesting.
And of course, now, if we look at the public sector, there's a huge opportunity to use the data that we've actually got in a positive way, because to be able to model and plan future healthcare services, road, rail links, schools, housing need, employment needs, is fantastic. You can see that. The ability now of the NHS, and they are doing it, to have MRI scans and X-rays, which are producing 9 to 10% more accurate results than clinicians in terms of detecting tumours and heart palpitations and things. It's fantastic. However, that comes at a cost, because we have to train the models to get it right. So we have to use huge sums of data. And where do we get that data from? Us. And then secondly, how do we know that data, for example, is right in the first place? So a good example would be that if we're going to use, in the States, a good example is using a sentencing tool against those people who are likely to reoffend. But when they trained the model, the AI model, they used data from the 60s and 70s. And policing in the States was certainly different than it is now.
Yeah.
And you can certainly understand that actually that it was most probably skewed towards Afro-Caribbean men, because at the time that they were they were predominantly the group that were being arrested and allegedly reoffending on the basis of that. But times change, and of course the data they're using is out of date. Seatbelts is another good example. Seatbelts in most modern cars are designed on the principles of the male physiologically.
Yeah, I heard this. Yeah.
But hang on, but women drive cars and we're built differently than women. Yeah, yeah. That's because the data used in the modelling came from people who drove cars in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
And the vast majority of people who drove cars in the 60s and 70s were men. So when you think about biases and then you start to train your AI model against this biased data set, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
If I try and open your phone using my face, it won't let me. Garbage in because it's the wrong face. And
the same with tools as well. Tools are designed for man as well. And that's based on
So AI has and data has the challenge of, is the initial data we've trained the machine to get it right? So training the machine just says, is it right? Is it right? Is it right? If you're training a machine to identify cats and dogs, is it a cat? Is it a cat? Is it a dog? You got it wrong. It's about getting good accuracy figures on that. But we need more data to be able to do so. So we can all see the benefits of data, all see the benefits of sharing data. But of course, with that, do we trust those people who have the data to do so? And then that brings me nicely onto marketing, Steve. You mentioned marketing just now. And of course, we're marketers' dream. Marketers' dream. Why would we not? For example, you're a surfing man. Why would we not send everything surfing-related products to Steve, for example? Because we want to cross and upsell to him. So it is an interesting landscape about our data. Like oil, it's supposed to be, the new oil. But like oil, unless you handle it carefully, if you leak some, then you're in trouble, and it costs you a damn sight more to clean it up. And sell your reputation. So it's a real interesting landscape to be in. I'm one of those who are positive. I'm glass half full man. I totally believe that the opportunities that AI can bring us and the positive use of data, the transparency. Data protection law says you have to have a lawful basis, you have to be fair, and you have to be transparent when you process personal data. Then absolutely so be it. And you have to keep it safe and only retain it for as long as, but you're only allowed to use it for the initial purpose that you collected for, blah, blah, blah. So, safeguards are in place and organisations are making those changes. So when people moan about data protection law, it's there to protect us.
And who's policing this?
One of the challenges you have is that every organisation has a responsibility. If they process personal data, for example, so that's anything that can identify us, either directly or indirectly, has a responsibility. And there is a regulator called the Information Commissioner, but really it's because there are so many organisations processing personal data. Look at every small business, for example.
Absolutely.
They have their own responsibility. So it's a self-policing exercise, and of which the regulator will take action if things go wrong.
I guess at some stage AI will be checking the AI.
AI is actually improving its own AI, yes.
Yes, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yes, it's got the ability to work the problems through. It's got the problem. It uses something called reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning is lovely. I like talking about reinforcement learning. So when I said to you that there are three types of AI, there's machine learning, there's generative AI, ChatGPT, and then there's deep learning. So that's the deeper models that we're using at the moment to detect, cancer detection, those sort of things in MRI scans. But reinforcement learning is a part of machine learning. It works on rewards and punishment. So it rewards itself. The AI tool rewards itself when it gets it right. So look at robots, it rewards itself. But one of the easiest examples of understanding reinforcement learning is Netflix. You turn your Netflix on, and in front of you, you've got a picture of things that they think you might want to watch, your recommendation system. It's profiled you, look at your age, look at what you watched before, the length of the type of the program, the genre, do you like horror films or do you like action movies or do you like rom-coms? It's profiling those sort of programs towards you. And the reinforcement punishment and learning is, the punishment is, if you get it wrong, it goes back. If you don't watch that program, that's the punishment. So it goes back into the system and tries to put up to 1 out of 20 different pictures in front of you of the same program to try and actually learn which picture you actually like. And if you press on it and you watch it, even for 10 minutes, that's the reward. Yes, I've done it. So there's not some little guy or girl sitting in your TV and saying, yeah, I got it right, let's have a party. It's the algorithm having a party saying, yeah, I've got that right, well done, sort of thing. And they would have set a policy. Netflix would have set a policy saying 80% of stuff that I'm sitting in front of Steve on Netflix, actually, I want him to watch. That's the policy. That's my KPI that
for
I
sure.
actually got to reach as such. So reinforcement learning is really good. Exactly the same, reinforcement. A bit like when we were kids, when we were in chemistry during the kids at school, we put our fingers through the Bunsen burner. Hopefully we wouldn't get burnt. When we got burnt, we learnt the way we could put it back, and we went back again, and we went back until we got it right, so...
Listen, I could literally chat to you all day long, and I'd be really keen for you to come back on to chat some more about all of the stuff we talked about. But what I want to move on quickly to is your evidence. And we've asked you for 5 bits of evidence, which you've already talked about one of them already. But what we're going to do for a bit of fun is we're going to give you a minute to talk about each one. And Alex is sitting over there with the dinner bell, and we're going to start off with the first one. Are you ready to go?
Yeah.
So your first bit of evidence is The Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleyman.
Yeah, Mustafa Suleyman, yeah. So interesting guy. Started in London in the 20s, 200s, or was it 200s or 20s? Cutting a very long story short, set up a number of successful AI companies. The Coming Wave really is, I'm listening to it rather than reading it at the moment, an e-book. It's about the coming wave of AI, about technology, the ability to move forward. He's now gone and worked for Microsoft as being the head of AI, so he knows his stuff.
Right.
And it's really interesting if you want to see how technology has started from and then developed from. But remember, look, the Wright brothers, if you're going to fly out of Newquay Airport this afternoon, you will not be flying on a Wright brothers airline. You'll be flying on a Boeing or Airbus or a Bombardier. And remember that those people who develop the first new technology aren't those people to commercialize it. And so Mustafa Suleyman, really strong advocate of that.
That was perfect. You've been practicing, haven't you? You've been rehearsing this. Yeah, absolutely. So the next one is Cannibals with Forks by John Elkington.
Yeah. Look, business is defined by John Elkington as cannibals. So those people in the commercial world are cannibals. They're there to drive shareholder value. No one goes into business with a commercial head on with a view for philanthropy. When you think about Microsoft and when it was first set up, they do great amount of philanthropy now, but actually it was about setting up a business that actually can change the world in terms of the way that we do business. So Cannibals with Forks really is about don't trust anyone in business, but if you are going to trust them, isn't the 21st century business about sustainability, not only from environmental but corporate social responsibility, and their philanthropy effort should be into environmental sustainability. And so Cannibals with Forks is, there are a whole bunch of crooks in the commercial world, but look, one thing they can do is actually promote sustainability in their business.
You literally have been practicing this, haven't you? That was perfect timing. The next one, the Dower Report.
Yeah, the Dower Report is not quite as dour as it sounds. That report, he was a planner. He was charged by the Attlee government in 1945 to write a report on green spaces in England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales. He was the guy that proposed that, one, there should be a statutory responsibility for government to keep open spaces open for 2 reasons. One of it, the war was so rubbish that actually everyone needs to get out and go into the Lake District and go into the North Yorkshire Moors. So the formation of national parks. And 2, put a statutory responsibility. They protect the landscape through planning, but they also are able to deliver environmental and recreational activities for the public who had a real bad time between 1939 and 1945. So the Dower Report is the start of outstanding areas of natural beauty and national parks.
Perfect. A Song for Cornwall by Will Keating.
Yeah. So Will Keating, the Song for Cornwall. Well, when you hear the Song for Cornwall, it emphasises the past history and the culture. May Trelawney's army never die. About mining, about fishing, and about farming, and really about the traditional heritage of Cornwall and how that. Now, I always say that actually that when we think about sustainable business for the future, we've got to move away from the environment whereby mining, fishing, and agriculture, we need to think differently about sustainable business. And so when I sing, and I love it because there's always a bit where it says Richard Treverick, if we remember, the steam engine was developed in Cornwall. There's always a good bit where I actually say, well, yeah, those industries are still around. Does anyone want to work on them? But we need to think about other things like AI centres, and we need to think about using the skills of the local population to think about other innovative, sustainable businesses that they can do from home, for example, or in groups.
Awesome. And the last one, a bonus. Oh, you've got an extra bonus here. Reid Hoffman on AI as intelligence amplifier.
Yeah, Reid Hoffman is a states billionaire. But he's one of the good guys in AI in terms of it. He is a Democrat. Not saying Democrats and Republicans are good, but he's a Democrat. Sits on the other side of the fence to the tech bros that are currently doing some interesting things in the market. But certainly he is a guy that podcasts weekly and has some really interesting. So if anyone wants to know about AI and a different perspective and a social and environmentally perspective, Reid Hoffman is the guy, rather than telling you how good he is about his algorithms and how and what new invention he's developed. So yeah, I would highly recommend Reid Hoffman being the guy to follow.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like some great reads and some great listening.
I try to get a bit of a diverse group there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank you very much. And now we're going to go over to your top tips. And once again, we're going to set the alarm for these. So are you ready, Alex? The first one is define your ethics and principles early in life.
I was very lucky that I grew up in an environment where we didn't have much money. I grew up on 2 council houses and I had a lot of fun in that environment, and it grounded me. And I defined my ethics really early in life and my principles early in life, and what I was prepared to accept and what I wasn't prepared to accept. And I've carried them through in business at the moment. I won't do business with anyone that's ethical principles do not agree with mine, and certainly keep them through. So define your ethics and principles, set your own standards. They will change. They will change, I agree. They will change as certainly at 17, 18, I was going on pro-solidarity, which was the Polish trade union marches to support trade unionism in Poland. I was certainly a member of the campaign for nuclear disarmament at the time, but my views.
Do you want to finish that one off?
Yeah. Yeah, my views have definitely changed in terms of nuclear deterrence, for example, but define them early in life and stick to them, yeah.
Excellent. And get involved in political causes.
Yeah, I guess it's the fact that change will only happen if we look at the things that have changed in the world, particularly women getting the vote, for example, political cause. When we think about change happening in our own country, for example, in Northern Ireland, in the end, it wasn't violence that changed; it was a political change that took place in terms of giving a fairly lasting peace in Northern Ireland, for example. And I would say that that change only takes place with the will and the enthusiasm of people. So if you want change to happen, don't get on Facebook, don't get on Instagram, don't get on social media and complain about it. Do something about it. Get up and change, and get up and vote and do those things and support those things. And certainly, yeah.
Trust no one in business.
Yeah. Okay, so remember what I said earlier, that people don't go into business to be philanthropists. They might go into business for lifestyle businesses. They might do it because they quite enjoy it. But actually, if someone says they'll pay you tomorrow, then do your due diligence and make sure they'll pay you. And, I've been burnt several times in business, particularly around people who have one day gone into administration and the week after set up the similar business with a similar name and started trading again and buying the profitable assets of that business and owe me £35,000. So from anyone who wants some good business advice, don't trust anyone until you've done your due diligence. Yeah. That changes over time as well, because once you've established a good relationship, that changes. But initially, stay. Yeah.
Be kind. Be nice. it costs nothing.
Yeah, I think I'm Steve, as you most probably know, I'm a rugby referee as well, and I think that those people who provide me with a car parking space, those people who are pleasant towards me, when I go back there, guess what? I have a better feeling about going back to that location. Where I have a really poor reception or a poor attitude from people, then if I go back there, I have that doesn't make me feel good about going back there. So be kind, be nice. It costs nothing, and we're all human beings. We're all equals, and we all come from the same place, and we'll all go to the same place. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Make marginal gains on what causes the most harm.
Yeah, I was doing some sums yesterday about marginal gains. Let's think about our own environmental protection and what we can do. And it's a bit like losing weight. Everyone wants to lose 1 stone within the first week. That's not going to happen. If you're going to lose weight, it's a marginal gain. Let's think about our own environmental. If we could, reduce our carbon footprint by 1% each month over 1 year, that would be 12%. We'd have reduced our carbon footprint by 12%. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to stop driving our car. We can give up, for example, 1 meat meal a week, for example, if we eat meat, for example. We can give up buying 1 piece of clothes, for example. When we can recycle our clothes, for example. We can stop buying a bottle of bottled water or tinned water, for example, once a week, and we can, it's marginal gains. Think about how you can change your behaviour 1%. Month 2, you'd have had 2%. Yeah,
I love that. That's inspirational, and I think very much in life as humans we want everything today.
Yeah, we do.
We want everything now.
Yeah, we're in that culture. We do. We do. I think we do. I'm the same. I'm going down to St Ives after this, and my broadband's not fitted, but I wanted it when I ordered it. So I wanted some man or woman to come around tomorrow and get it all set up, but that doesn't happen. That's not life. Yeah.
So tell me, what's one thing we can all do today to make a better tomorrow and find that greener room?
I think the first thing is to recognise that we are in a climate crisis. So I think that's important to recognise. I drove past Budman Moor today and I saw the fires that had been caused. Now, whilst they might have been caused by human beings and undertaking criminal activity, the ground was certainly dry enough and tinder enough to do so. We're in April. Yeah. It should not be it should not be as dry as we've had. We've not had rain for 3-4 weeks, I don't think, or any sizable rain for 3-4 weeks. So what we can do is, I think, set up a pattern of marginal gains for our environmental activity, and we should, and what I say in getting involved in politics is being able to push that agenda through. We should not living in the 21st century in the UK of having sewage being leaked into bathing beaches and surfing beaches during not only the summer but the winter as well. We should not be. We're a first world country. So get involved in those political causes. I think they're really important, and support them. But secondly, make our own slight, small, marginal changes. We don't need to give up everything, but we can certainly be sensible about it and better and change our behaviour, really, and change our behaviour about how we do things.
Nigel, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. I could chat to you for another few episodes at least. If you'd come back and do a part 2, that would be awesome.
Yeah, part 2's are lovely, and you could buy me a pint at some time as well. That would be good.
Well, I might even do that. Thank you very much,
no,
Nigel.
For sure. And Bo's really enjoyed herself as well. Now she's got the ball out there.
And we'll get a picture of Bo up on the profile as well there, look. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much.
That's it for this episode of Searching for a Greener Room. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Let us know what you think, who you'd like to hear from, any topics you want us to cover. Drop us a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. See you next time.